Did Jillian Segal give false evidence at the Parliamentary inquiry into anti-Semitism? Let's find out. I'm Nick Hanna, criminal lawyer, and welcome to the What and the Why. Last week I put out a video about Australia's Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Jillian Segal, and her plan to radically reform our country. Now, I tried to cover as much as I could in that video, but there's one part of the story that I just don't think I did justice to, and that's the question of whether Segal gave false evidence before the Parliamentary inquiry into anti-Semitism last month. The question is an important one, because it's not only relevant to her potential conflicts of interest, but it also goes to the heart of her credibility, and therefore her suitability as Special Envoy. So let me start by setting the scene. On the 12th of February this year, the New South Wales Parliament established an inquiry into anti-Semitism in this state. The politician who had pushed for the inquiry was member of the Legislative Council, Chris Rath, who now sits on the inquiry. While there was plenty of reporting on the creation of the inquiry, the media failed to mention Rath's close ties to the pro-Israel lobby. In 2014, while Rath was leader of the Young Liberals, he visited Israel on a trip funded by Australia's most influential Zionist lobby group, the Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council, or AICC. When Rath returned from the trip, he spoke at an event organised by AICC, together with the leader of Young Labor, as well as other members of both the Liberal and the Labor Party who had attended AICC-funded junkets to Israel that year. In fact, Chris Rath is such a staunch supporter of Israel that when he was first elected, he used his inaugural private member statement in the New South Wales Upper House, which has no say in foreign policy, to voice his support for a foreign state, Israel.
Today, I wanted to use my first private member's statement in this place to demonstrate my unwavering support for the State of Israel and its right to defend itself as the only truly free and truly democratic nation in the region.
Once the inquiry was established, it started receiving submissions from various individuals and organisations. Special Envoy Jillian Segal provided written submissions in which she also requested that she be able to give oral evidence at the hearing itself. On the 4th of July, it was Segal's turn to give evidence.
Jillian Segal, I'm Australia's Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, and I have with me a Hebrew Bible, and I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Now, before I get into the substance of what she said, I want to make very clear that I'm not alleging in this video that Segal gave false evidence at the inquiry, let alone that she did so knowingly. It may well be that she is an innocent explanation for everything that I'm about to share with you. But I do think that there are some parts of her evidence which appear to be questionable and should be investigated, especially given the importance of the inquiry and her public role as Special Envoy. Now, as you can probably imagine, there's plenty of things she said during her evidence that I don't agree with. But for today's episode, I just want to focus on the evidence she gave in response to the following question asked by Deputy Chair of the Inquiry, Jewish Australian, Greens member of the Legislative Council, Amanda Khan.
Could you explain to us how you disclose or manage any real or perceived conflicts of interest between your role as the Special Envoy for Anti-Semitism with your role as Chair of the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce?
Now, to give you some context about that question, as I explained in my last video, Jillian Segal was, at the time of her appointment as Special Envoy in July last year, the long-standing chair of the New South Wales branch of the powerful business lobby group, the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce, or the AICC. The AICC has close ties to the Israeli weapons industry, including being sponsored by Israel's largest arms manufacturer, Elbit Systems, which makes many of the weapons used by Israel to carry out its genocidal campaign in Gaza. As I also explained in my last video, it's my view that being the head of the AICC and being Special Envoy presented a potential conflict of interest for Segal. In short, this is because I believe that being the leader of the AICC would give her an interest in using her role as Special Envoy to weaponize anti-Semitism in order to stifle criticism of the Israeli war machine and to push for the criminalization of the BDS movement that campaigns for the boycott of many of the Israeli businesses that are part of the AICC. So with that in mind, let's listen to Segal's response.
Well, actually, it's quite easy. I'm no longer the chair of the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce. I resigned last year.
Thank you. That's helpful. And my second question is about
not that I believed it was, can I just say, it's not an advocacy organisation. It was an event organisation and a knowledge organisation. So I didn't actually see it as a great conflict, but it was better that I stepped down. So I have.
Okay, now there's a bit to unpack with that answer, so let's go through it step by step. Segal's first claim is that she resigned as chair of the AICC last year. While she doesn't say when exactly last year she resigned, I think many people would interpret what she said to mean that she resigned when she was appointed Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, which was back on the 9th of July 2024. But when did Segal actually resign? As I exposed in my last video, on the 30th of October last year, the AICC held its annual Innovation Summit, and according to its official agenda, Segal was scheduled to speak as chair of both the New South Wales and Queensland branches. So either someone's made a pretty big typo on the summit agenda, or Jillian Segal was still the chair as of the 30th of October, which was almost 4 months after her appointment as Special Envoy. Now, since I made my last video, I've had a closer look at this issue, and I've obtained the official company records for the AICC from the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, or ASIC. What I'm about to show you is very interesting, to say the least. This is the current and historical company extract for the New South Wales branch of the AICC. It's the document that records important info about the company, including all of the current and previous directors. Here you can see Jillian Segal's name on the list of previous directors. It shows she was appointed as director on the 20th of February 2013, and crucially, that she didn't cease being the director until the 17th of March this year. I've also obtained the relevant document that was lodged by the AICC with ASIC to advise that Segal had resigned as director, and it confirms that she ceased the role on the 17th of March 2025. Now, I understand that being the chair is not the same as being the director. It may be that Segal stepped down as the chair sometime after the summit on the 30th of October last year, but stayed on as director until March this year. But in my view, that doesn't really matter. If Segal had a potential conflict as Special Envoy because she was chair of the AICC, she also had a potential conflict as a director. So why didn't she disclose it? Well, this was one of 11 questions that I asked the Special Envoy in an email that I sent her in preparation for this episode. I started the email by introducing myself and sharing a link to the last episode of the podcast, just in case you missed it. I then asked her the following questions about her role as chair of the AICC New South Wales Division, including, on which date did you step down as chair of the AICC New South Wales? Were you ever chair of the Queensland Division of the AICC? If so, on which date did you step down from that role? Did you speak at the 2024 summit, which is a reference to the AICC's Innovation Summit on the 30th of October last year? You gave evidence that, although you didn't see your role as chair as presenting a great conflict with your role as Special Envoy, it was better that you stepped down. Was that because you considered there to be an actual or perceived conflict with your role as Special Envoy? The next questions in my email to Jillian Segal were about her role as director of the AICC. They were, can you explain why you remained a director of AICC New South Wales until February 2025, after you had been appointed to the role as envoy? Would you accept that your ongoing role as director of the AICC New South Wales until February 2025 gives rise to an actual or perceived conflict of interest with your role as envoy? Can you explain why you did not disclose to the New South Wales Parliament that you continued on as director of AICC New South Wales until February 2025? I gave Segal more than 48 hours to respond to my email, and at the time of recording this, she hasn't done that, and so we don't have the benefit of her answer to these questions. But that's not to say that she doesn't have a good answer. Maybe the records are wrong, maybe she forgot when she resigned, maybe she made a mistake. To be clear, I'm not accusing her of lying. I'm simply saying it should be investigated. Okay, the next part of Segal's evidence that I want to look at is her claim that the AICC is not an advocacy organisation, but rather it's an event and knowledge organisation. It's an important claim because she used it to justify why she didn't see any great conflict of interest between her role as Special Envoy and chair of the AICC. In my view, Segal's claim that the AICC isn't an advocacy organisation just doesn't hold water. The AICC is a chamber of commerce. Chambers of commerce have various roles, but one key role is usually advocacy. One of the main ways in which the AICC is engaged in advocacy is by making written submissions to parliamentary committees in support of increased trade between Australia and Israel. For example, in 2021, while Jillian Segal was chair of the New South Wales Division, the AICC made submissions to the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Australia's relations with the Middle East. In those submissions, the AICC lobbied for a free trade agreement between Australia and Israel, as well as collaborative research and development between the two countries. In the same year, the AICC made separate submissions to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in support of the establishment of an Australia-Israel free trade agreement. In those submissions, the AICC lobbied for increased military trade between Australia and Israel and used a joint venture with the Israeli weapons company Rafael as an example. This is the same Rafael that was in the news last month after it released a promotional video showing its kamikaze drone system, Spike Firefly, tracking and killing an apparently unarmed Palestinian in Gaza. In my email to Segal, I asked whether she stands by her assertion that the AICC is not an advocacy organisation, but she declined to respond. Now, I'm not suggesting that as chair, Segal had any involvement in this advocacy work, but that's not really the question. The question is whether or not she knew about the AICC's advocacy work, and if she did, why she said it wasn't an advocacy organisation. We don't know the answer to that question, and that's why it needs to be investigated. Okay, so that's the last thing I'll say about the AICC, but there's one more aspect of Segal's evidence that I want to quickly talk about today. When Segal said that being the chair of the AICC wasn't a great conflict of interest because it's not an advocacy organisation, that seems to imply that she agrees that it would be a great conflict of interest if she was chairing an advocacy organisation. Well, I've done a bit of digging and found something that I think needs some closer scrutiny. As I explained in my last video, prior to becoming Special Envoy, Segal was the immediate past president of the powerful pro-Israel lobby group, the ECAJ. Since becoming Special Envoy, Segal has continued to express strong support for the ECAJ, including at the inquiry into anti-Semitism.
Now, I've had the benefit of reading some of the submissions to you and the transcript of the evidence given. And I must say, I really strongly endorse the evidence given by ECAJ co-CEO Alex Rivchin and want to highlight the role of the ECAJ as the most genuinely representative body of Australian Jews.
But what Segal didn't mention during the inquiry is that she is still an office holder of a company named ECAJ Harm Prevention Fund Limited, which I'll refer to as the ECAJ Fund. Here is the current and historical extract that I've obtained for the ECAJ Fund, which records Segal as still being a director, a position she's held since 2010. Now, the exact relationship between the ECAJ and the ECAJ Fund is unknown, but the two entities appear to be very closely related. Indeed, 3 of the 5 directors of the ECAJ Fund hold senior positions in the ECAJ, being Deputy President Robert Good SC, Honorary Treasurer Peter Wise, and Co-CEO Peter Wertheim. The 5th director of the ECAJ Fund is Yair Miller, who is the CEO of Israel fundraising giant United Israel Appeal. According to official documents located on the Australian Government's website for registered charities, the trust deed for the ECAJ Fund lists its purposes as including the following: preparing submissions, media releases and articles regarding racial, religious and ethnic intolerance and discrimination, researching, analysing and documenting the activities of individuals and organisations that promote anti-Semitism, investigating and taking action, including legal action, against people involved in anti-Semitic activities, and conducting seminars, forums, lectures, conferences for the public that encourage people to resist and oppose anti-Semitism and other forms of racism. So it appears that at least some of the stated purposes involve advocacy work. And if that's correct, it's my view that Segal's role as director of the ECAJ Fund presents a potential conflict of interest with her role as Special Envoy. In my email to Segal, I asked some questions about the ECAJ Fund, including what her role as director has entailed since being appointed as Special Envoy, whether she accepts that her role as director gives rise to an actual or perceived conflict of interest, and if so, what steps she has taken to disclose or manage that conflict. These questions, like all of the others, remain unanswered. Again, that doesn't mean she doesn't have a good explanation. Maybe the records are wrong, maybe she forgot to disclose her involvement with the ECAJ Fund, maybe it's no longer involved in any advocacy work. But whatever her explanation is, the public deserves to know it. Her salary is funded by the taxes paid by the Australian people. So ultimately, I think that it's the Australian public that she should be held accountable to. As I said at the start of this video, I am not alleging that Jillian Segal has knowingly given false evidence at the inquiry. But I do say that the matters I've raised in this video are worthy of investigation. The public has a right to know whether she's had any conflicts of interest, and if so, how these conflicts may have affected her role as Special Envoy. And in my view, it won't be good enough for her to simply say that she didn't see a particular conflict of interest as great in size. Whether the conflict was great or small, real or perceived, it doesn't really matter. What matters is maintaining public confidence in her integrity as Special Envoy, and in the government for appointing her. And that public confidence will be undermined if the Australian people believe that she's had any potential conflicts and she's failed to disclose them.